Tuesday, August 13, the mountain and the multitude. Read Mark chapter 9, verses 1 to 13. What did Peter, James and John see one night with Jesus? Chapter 9, beginning at verse 1. And he said to them, Truly I tell you, some who are standing here will not taste death before you see that the kingdom of God has come with power. After 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James and John with him and led him up a high mountain where they were all alone. There he was transfigured before them. His clothes became dazzling white, whiter than anyone in the world could bleach them. And there appeared before them Elijah and Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Peter said to Jesus, Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He did not know what to say. They were so frightened. Then a cloud appeared and covered them, and a voice came from the cloud. This is my son, whom I love. Listen to him. Suddenly, when they looked around, they no longer saw anyone with them except Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus gave them orders not to tell anyone what they had seen until the Son of Man had risen from the dead. They kept the matter to themselves, discussing what rising from the dead meant. And they asked him, Why do the teachers of the law say that Elijah must come first? Jesus replied, To be sure, Elijah does come first and restores all things. Why then is it written that the Son of Man must suffer much and be rejected? But I tell you, Elijah has come, and they have done to him everything they wished, just as it is written about him. In Mark chapter 9, verse 1, Jesus predicts that some standing with him would not taste death before seeing the kingdom of God come in power. That prediction is fulfilled within a few days when he takes Peter, James and John up a high mountain alone. There he is transfigured before them into the glory of the heavenly kingdom. Elijah and Moses appear from the heavenly realm and converse with Jesus. Luke notes that they were talking about Jesus' departure. The Greek word is exodos, that he was about to accomplish in Jerusalem. As we read in Luke 9, verses 30 and 31, 2 men, Moses and Elijah, appeared in glorious splendor talking with Jesus. They spoke about his departure, which he was about to bring to fulfillment at Jerusalem. Thus, this scene of glory is tied to Jesus' coming death on the cross, as we read in Mark 9, verse 9. Let's read that again. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus gave them orders not to tell anyone what they had seen until the Son of Man had risen from the dead. It would give hope when the disciples see him crucified. Upon descending the mountain the following morning, the 3 disciples asked Jesus about Elijah coming first. Likely this idea is tied to the expectation that Elijah would reappear before the Messiah, as we read in Malachi chapter 4 and verses 4 and 5. See, I will send the prophet Elijah to you before the great and dreadful day of the Lord comes. He will turn the hearts of the parents to their children, and the hearts of the children to their parents, or else I will come and strike the land with total destruction. Jesus replies that Elijah has already come, a reference to John the Baptist. Just as they killed John, so Jesus will die at their hands. But he will rise after 3 days. After the night of glory, the scene at the bottom of the mountain was sad, as we read in Mark chapter 9, verses 14 to 29. When they came to the other disciples, they saw a large crowd around them, and the teachers of the law arguing with them. As soon as all the people saw Jesus, they were overwhelmed with wonder and ran to greet him. "What are you arguing with them about?" he asked. A man in the crowd answered, "Teacher, I brought you my son, who is possessed by a spirit that has robbed him of speech. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him to the ground. He foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive out the spirit, but they could not." "You unbelieving generation," Jesus replied, "how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy to me." So they brought him. When the spirit saw Jesus, it immediately threw the boy into a convulsion. He fell to the ground and rolled around, foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the boy's father, "How long has he been like this?" "From childhood," he answered. "It has often thrown him into fire or water to kill him. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us." "If you can," said Jesus, "everything is possible for one who believes." Immediately the boy's father explained, "I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief." When Jesus saw that a crowd was running to the scene, he rebuked the impure spirit. "You deaf and mute spirit," he said, "I command you, come out of him and never enter him again." The spirit shrieked, convulsed him violently, and came out. The boy looked so much like a corpse that many said, "He's dead." But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him to his feet, and he stood up. After Jesus had gone indoors, his disciples asked him privately, "Why couldn't we drive it out?" He replied, "This kind can come out only by prayer." The 9 disciples had encountered a demon-possessed boy whom they could not heal. When Jesus arrives at the scene, everyone runs to see him. The story unfolds of the demon's power over the child. Jesus seems to take a long time inquiring about the details of the demon possession. It proves too much for the father, who blurts out, "If you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us," in verse 22. Jesus immediately picks up on the expression of doubt. The Lord's response can be paraphrased, "What do you mean, if you can?" in verse 23. Suddenly, like a bolt of lightning from the sky, the father sees that it is not only his son who has a problem, he has a problem of unbelief. And his unbelief could result in his son not being healed. The desperate father casts himself on Jesus' mercy with the memorable line, "I believe, help my unbelief," in verse 24. Jesus heals the boy. And so to finish today, in what situations, if any, have you had to cry out, "I believe, help my unbelief"? What did you learn from these experiences?
This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. And you can listen and watch at the same time on YouTube. Remember, God is always faithful.